be all about the DNA stuff he was doing, the advanced DNA stuff. This guy named Boris Nikolic, that he was in there. He's managing Bill Gates's money. He's bringing these AI scientists down to use AI in biology. So he's bringing down the head of the MIT lab, Marvin Minsky. They're arranging for girls to sleep with Marvin Minsky in the testimony we're going to show you today. We're going to talk about 3 other billionaires that are there on the island that just so happen to be there. Pritzker came out in the May drop last year, but he's again in these new documents that came out on January the 4th from Axios. We're going to talk about, there's Marvin Minsky. He died in 2016, I believe, but make no mistake about it. This is AI, and in the descriptions you're going to hear today, it's AI for biology. It's the domain thing. Andy saw the testimony from Epstein, and I saw it, and we both said the same thing. This is Bob Malone's domain. This is MIT, the AI being applied to try to find the best lock and key combination to repurpose drugs. But you'll see that where Epstein talks about repurposing prostate cancer drugs over to breast cancer, for instance, this repurposing idea that was the Bob Malone domain idea. I'm not saying Bob Malone was on the island, but I am saying the billionaires that were plugging into this idea of targeted genomics are there. Sergey Brin is there. He's the head of Google. He's the one who said, Google your genome. So he's got the whole genome project with his wife, Wojo, who runs 23andMe, right? So he's there on the island. The other one is this Max Zuckerman,
Mort Zuckerman.
Mort Zuckerman, who runs Mort Zuckerman.
A little more Jewish.
Eddie, as you know, I offered my kids up to the state of Israel to serve in the IDF. So I love the idea of democracy in the Middle East, but I don't like when you do false flags. Okay, so, but Mort Zuckerman is New York Daily News. This is the CIA Wurlitzer, right? This is the CIA Wurlitzer that Dulles talked about for Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch is the one with his Wall Street Journal releases these things, and Mort Zuckerman runs USA or US World and News Report. Okay, so here's the Wurlitzer going down there to the island, and then Pritzker was the head of the Department of Commerce. He's this kind of liaison to sort of Israeli intelligence. The foundation that we looked into in Chicago, which is the McCormick Foundation. This is General Grange and so forth, this heavy duty connection to the CIA. So we're looking at why are all these billionaires down there if they're not taking the military research that's being put into biology and then trying to commercially capitalize on it. That's what we think it is. And when you see the testimony from Jeff Epstein, we think you'll agree that that's what it is. So that's just one of the things we're going to cover today, but we're going to go, actually, Andy's got Michael Ovitz. Michael Ovitz is also a billionaire. That's on
your agent to the stars, all them stars that were flying in and out of Epstein. I wonder if Ovitz was kind of the middleman setting that stuff up.
You want Scarlett Johansson's eggs for your next baby? Here's your chance. You know, Michael Ovitz, he's also runs Disney for a couple of years. So, he's plugged into the island. You'll also hear Jeff Epstein in his own words talk about bringing Nobel Prize winners down to the island. So this has nothing to do with just trafficking. It has nothing to do with just using pretty girls to compromise people. It's also what's the end goal, right? Which is a tool which can help you flip countries and help you consolidate Israel into a greater Israel is part of it. Not only that, selling it to other countries who want to consolidate their holdings as well. So that's what this is about this morning. And it's going to be more fun than you can shake a stick at.
It is it was surprising to me when we started talking about this the other day. All these Nobel Prize winners and all these billionaires going to the island. I was like everyone else. I thought it was just for like blackmail, just for compromise reasons. The fact that they were building this this server on the island, and they were doing like algorithmic AI financial transactions, and they were also starting to dig into this biomedical universe as well. And it does, like you said earlier, it looks like the started domain when they were getting into all these therapeutics and testing people's bloods and getting their DNA kits and trying to have the computer the computer algorithm come up with the proper therapeutic, the proper treatment for patients. That was Jeff Epstein's goal on with this project, and with what happened and during the coronavirus pandemic, and who knows if it was his stuff that was actually out there being used to come up with coronavirus and remdesivir as the proper therapeutics to treat coronavirus.
Yeah, and Andy, as you know, we're all about who, what, when, where, how, and why, and the specifics. We're going to take you to the Jeff Epstein Foundation. We're going to show you how Marvin Minsky went down there 2009 to the Virgin Islands to the AI conference. We're going to show you how he was bringing these people in for scientific conferences. Yes, the last time we talked about Fergie, the Duchess of York, married to, of course, to Prince Andrew, bringing Dr. Eric Braverman down from New York, a key contact with David Petraeus, to talk about longevity pathways for these elites. This was the Path Foundation. Again, this is stuff we talked about in 2016 that just kind of got swept under the rug along with KKNR. But this is a part of what was being offered down there on the island. And as these documents keep coming out, they keep confirming our reporting, showing it's more intelligence-based, it's more about bio agents and sword and shield than it is about the girls. And you have all these people out there running around trying to make it about girls again, right? When all the documents are telling you exactly the different. It's billionaires investing in these technologies.
And here's Sergey Brin, the Google co-founder. He also has connections to Metabiota and Nathan Wolf and Hunter Biden as well. So these connections, they run deep into what's actually going on in the zeitgeist nowadays when it comes to medicine. Sergey Brin, Jeff Epstein, Metabiota, Nathan Wolf, Ghislaine Maxwell. It's a bunch of medical links going on here. But George Webb, which did you want me to start with the pictures and stuff you sent me this morning, or do you want me to read the testimony?
Yeah, let's start with the pictures, because the reason I say that is there are some tweets out there about this gal who's Biden's current Secretary of State, reporting to Blinken, Assistant Secretary of State. We'll get to electroporation in a minute. We'll get to Farkas in a minute. We'll get to Sandy Hook in a minute, how these might be the anthrax murders of these kids, these meningitis murders. We'll get to that. But yeah, start with that tweet right there. Oh, okay. Well, there's Minsky dying in 2016. You can click on any one of these if you want.
Sorry. I think I downloaded. I think they came in a bit out of order. This one?
Yeah. Okay. So there's this guy named Jesse out there, and his name is on Twitter. His name is Jesse Epstein plus WEF. And he's saying that there are people plagiarizing his work. Blue Canaries, this woman out of Texas who I respect greatly as a researcher, he's saying, oh, Blue Canaries is stealing my work about how Jeff Epstein toured all over Africa with this gal, and her name I can't quite, here, I'll go to the
Gail Smith.
Yeah, she's saying, hey, Gail Smith is running all around with Metabiota all over Africa, and Gail Smith is seemingly the person who is running a State Department diplomatic immunity for spreading diseases so that Nathan Wolf of Metabiota can collect all the statistics to do the digital detection for this and get the pattern recognition for digital detection. And, I don't care who breaks these stories. I just want to get to the deep state. I just want to unwind the deep state. So Jesse, we're going to show your stuff. We're going to give you attribution. But go ahead, Andy, read a little bit about Gail Smith, who Jeff Epstein toured Africa with.
So Gail Smith is the CEO of One Campaign. Smith was formerly coordinator of global COVID response and health security at the U.S. Department of State, and was a former administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. And she's from Bexley, Ohio, just around the corner from
Les Wexner.
from Battelle and Les Wexner. So I guarantee she knows who those fellas are.
Well, I have toured Bexley in depth over the last month, and I've been to Bexley many times, and I've never gone to Les Wexner's mansion, but we've been down to the State House and so forth, and we said Les Wexner's had a long relationship with the intelligence agencies, with Mossad and the Mega Group, and their connections to the CIA. Fronting with a lot of either philanthropic fronts or corporate fronts for this type of research. Ramaswamy's wife is also involved in this ear, nose, and throat, upper mucosal intake of these things like anthrax. We've talked about Daryl Galloway doing the anthrax research with Vical and then also DNA vaccines. Mark Kulak's done a lot on that as well. That's Bob Malone's business partner. That's Bob Malone's CIA business partner. So what we're trying to get to here is not, squabbling amongst ourselves. We're trying to get to the juice. We're trying to get to the verifiable facts here that Jeff Epstein did go all over with Gail Smith. We said in March 2020 with Donnie O'Sullivan on CNN, it's USAID Predict, right? And 2 shows ago with Peter Duke, I played that phone call, right, with Donnie O'Sullivan saying, hey, Donnie, it's USAID Predict. Ralph Barrick is one of the universities. We talked about the universities. Here we have a direct match with Jeff Epstein involved with USAID, not only for the stuff that came before, but also coronavirus. Like you said, Andy, coronavirus. And in my book, The Corona Man Cometh, which is on my Substack, I talk about Nathan Wolf. I talk about Boris Nikolic. I talk about Jeff Epstein managing the money of Bill Gates, which again is another front, another rinse through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's a humanitarian rinse for the CIA's money, investing that in these genetic targeted therapies, right? That's what I say in Corona Man Cometh. Now we see that Jeff Epstein, direct from his testimony, is saying, I managed money for Bill Gates. This is the money he managed at JP Morgan through this fund. And this whole lawsuit is about this Southern Trust, not the Southern Air Transport, which I reported on in Columbus with Cliff Arnebeck and Bob Fitrakis. But this is Southern Air. This is Southern Trust, and the 4 billionaires that are named, not speculation. These are 4 billionaires that are in the subpoena. Is Sergey Brin, okay, through their Alphabet investments in this targeted genetics? Is Marvin Minsky through the AI lab and the AI? And this is the December 2019 conference that Jeff Epstein was at with Marvin Minsky, and the Wurlitzer, Mort
Zuckerman,
and then also Ovitz,
Michael Ovitz.
For providing the ovaries, Ovitz ovaries.
Hollywood ovaries.
And we have Jeff Epstein talking about bringing in the Nobel Prize sperm. So this is not conjecture. This is the subject of a case right now. And when Megyn Kelly from Fox says that Jeff Epstein soon will speak, we believe that they will apply, Megyn Kelly of Fox News will apply the Peter Duke AI technology, the 11 Labs technology, to these things we're about ready to show you. So you will actually hear this in the voice of Jeff Epstein. And if you click on anything with red, you'll see some of that testimony. So go ahead and read that testimony, if you will, Andy.
Did you want me to read the top one or the bottom one first?
Read the top one, just so everybody knows this is, okay. Yeah.
All right, so this is from the Epstein testimony. The first conference took place last December in the U.S. Virgin Islands and brought together a prestigious panel of scientists to identify the greatest threats to the Earth. The threats include acts of bioterrorism, nuclear calamities, and and or nuclear warfare, overpopulation, asteroid and meteor threats, supervolcanoes, mass tectonic plates, rogue self-replicating nanomachines, super intelligent computers, and high energy chain reactions that could disrupt the fabric of space itself. The conference was organized by cognitive scientist Marvin Minsky, professor of electrical engineering and computer science at MIT and co-founder of MIT's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. Other scientists included Martin Nowak, professor of biology and mathematics and director of program for evolutionary dynamics at Harvard; Lawrence Krauss, professor of physics, foundation professor of the School of Earth and Space Exploration and director of the Origins Project at Arizona State University; and Gregory Benford, professor of physics and astronomy at the University of California, Irvine.
Okay, now if we go to this, you can read this testimony where there, I think this is Guthrie Roberts answering the questions. So go ahead and read this testimony if you would.
So where were you and where was Miss Maxwell when she directed you to go have sex with Marvin Minsky? And then Mr. Edwards, object to the form, I don't know, by Mrs. Menninger. Where did you go to have sex with Marvin Minsky? Marvin Minsky? Answer, I believe it was the U.S. Virgin Islands. Jeffrey Epstein's island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So this was the person admitting to having sexual relations with Marvin Minsky, the Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah, so there it is. And now I will direct you to, there's Marvin Minsky. He's the father of AI. And we know through Leidos and the $10 billion purchase order that Bob Malone's been working on, we know that AI is the centerpiece of the DARPA domain project. And the DARPA domain project is all about this. It's all about repurposing drugs. It's all about saying, hey, here's a prostate drug. Let's change it just a little bit and give it a new name. And now we have a breast cancer drug. So let's go to a couple of other of the files there, Andy, and in any particular order you want to go in.
I believe we're talking about the Wambach GE patient. I think those were only files I had left on Minsky, George.
Okay, now this is a more we're going to go into the Jeff Epstein testimony. Do you have the Jeff Epstein testimony that you were planning on reading, Andy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go to the Jeff Epstein testimony. We're going to go ahead and have Andy Dabala play the role of Jeff Epstein. Do not direct your anger or hatred at Andy Dabala. He's just reading the part. Later, we'll have an AI interpretation. Megan Kelly will have that later. For now, though, this is Andy Dabala playing the role of Jeff Epstein. His 38, I think it's an 83-page document.
Mm-hmm.
His testimony starts on page 8.
Yeah, this is actually a hearing that was held at the U.S. Virgin Islands for the Economic Development Commission. Epstein had to go in front of the panel and break down what Southern Trust was doing exactly, and they had some things in here that were a little out there, and it actually pinpointed some things that were going on nowadays. So when I started reading this, I was like, oh my God, we got something here. So I may have been wrong about the Epstein part. Okay, here we go. Jeff Epstein. So Mr. Epstein, thank you. This is his opening presentation for the panel. So Mr. Epstein, thank you. What's happening in today's environment is the fact that most everyone here has a computer in front of them. Most of the time, if you look back 25 years, if you wanted to know whose genetics determined your current circumstance, if you wanted to get financial advice, if you wanted to get medical advice, you would go to one doctor. You would hopefully choose the right doctor, and he would, according to his experience, say, fine, maybe you have a stomach ache, and we have, in response to your problems, 3 or 4 solutions. In fact, if you were going to go into the Army years ago, they classified your health like only 5 categories. You were sort of very healthy, or you were F4. Everything was general and very broad categories. as you all are aware nowadays, has become personalized. You have your clothes that you wear can be custom made. Everyone has many options on how to set up their computers. What's happening in the world is that many decisions that used to be made by one single individual, now it's impossible to get accurate information without accessing vast numbers of databases. What Southern Trust will do will be basically organizing mathematical algorithms so that if I want to know what my predisposition is for cancer, we can now have my gene specifically sequence. Now, George Webb, when I heard that, that's when I was like, domain.
Yeah,
Domain is on the forefront.
let's stop right there. Hopefully, this is the voice you just heard was not Jeff Epstein. That was Andy Dabala portraying Jeff Epstein. But you just heard in Jeff Epstein's own words, played by the voice actor Andy Dabala, that this is not about anything other than using AI to solve cancer. This is not about anything other than bringing elites to Little Epstein Island and DNA sequencing them and showing them by accessing vast databases, showing them their personal faults in their genome, and then providing solutions for them so they'll keep living. Longevity solutions, longevity pathways, Path Foundation, Jeff Epstein Foundation. So just, again, a lot of people want to speculate, right, about what Epstein actually said. We're giving you the voice of Jeff Epstein. So go ahead.
So essentially, this was kind of like Jeff Epstein's like little fountain of youth he's selling to all the elites of the world, and they're coming in just like, oh, I heard there's this new gene sequencing thing on Little St. James, and you can live a little longer. And if you're sick, go to Mr. Epstein. Is it that type of thing going on at the moment?
Yep. The AI algorithms, and they also want to be the world's doctor. So they want to be the world's AI source for doctor. They want you to go to this source first before you go to your local neighborhood doctor. And you're going to see how this snowballs here in a second with your further testimony.
All right, here we go. Unfortunately, it hit home as of yesterday for me exactly what my company does. One of my closest friends was dying. I want to know who this friend was. One of my closest friends.
It's the DOD Secretary Lloyd Austin, right?
He is.
He has prostate cancer because
prostate cancer. Yeah, that just came out today.
No, I'm just kidding. This is in 2012. But if let's just say Lloyd Austin didn't want to send the 101st or the 82nd to take out half of Yemen, right? So that Saudi Arabia and Israel could share half of Yemen, right? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, Lloyd Austin's cancer could get worse, couldn't it? So, but anyway, continue.
I guarantee Lloyd Austin's genes are being run through the Epstein sequencer as we speak.
Maybe 10 years ago, but anyway, continue.
One of my closest friends was diagnosed 2 days ago with a terminal cancer. Now he's at the best hospital. I've known him since I was 6 years old. His tumor needs to be sequenced. We will spend time going through the DNA of his exact tumor. Now that what's the first step that's available today? It hasn't been available ever before, but that's only the first step. Now we know specifically what type of cancer he has. In the past, unless you are lucky enough to have the right doctor when you went to diagnose that problem, and he can say, well, Jose or Albert, I've seen this before and you were out of luck. Now that will do. Apparently Epstein's speech is a little weird here. Now, what we'll do is we'll use this one sequence, his own DNA, and the specific problem he has with his cancer, and access worldwide databases of every single drug across the world that's been tested, and all different types of cancers that specifically have his DNA sequence involved. So the chances of a successful treatment are now viable, where before, as he said last night, he would be dead in 4 weeks.
Okay, so now we'll leave it right there. Now, this is an opportunity for people. This is why I say citizen journalism is so important, because now people can go, well, who is someone that knew Jeff Epstein since he was 6 years old, right? And now you're going to be able to pair this with the guy's cancer. Now we're going to be able to look and see who this guy is. Okay, and who, I think it's going to be one of the DIA informants along the way. It's either Felix Sater or one of the bagmen like Lev Parnas or Fruman that he's known since he's been 6 years old. But this would have to go all the way back to New York, right? It would have to go back to his earliest days growing up in New York and Long Island. It would have to, be like Nathan Firestone or somebody like that. It's got to be somebody who's known his whole life. But even there, this is what I'm saying. I call them takeoffs. You can do takeoffs as a citizen journalist. You can get involved at any point along the way and figure out who it is. It also helps people give people a ramp on to this story. I'm sorry, Eddie, I'm just doing a little bit here, but if you have prostate cancer, for instance, right, and this guy has prostate cancer, or Lloyd Austin has prostate cancer, John O'Loughlin has prostate cancer. Now there's a ramp for somebody who has prostate cancer or has a loved one who has prostate cancer to be interested in this story. And now realize that person's now going to realize Epstein Island is not about the girls. It's about the prostate cancer. And that's also something you're going to be able to tell to other people. And as much as I love Ryan Dawson and as much as I love Sean in England, they keep hammering on this sex angle, and nobody will talk about this State Department USAID tours with Gail Smith through Africa. They're not going through Africa to find America's Next Top Model. He was doing that with Jean-Luc in Paris. They're going through there because they're testing different drugs, right? And they're also accessing and have access to the database of drugs that are in trials, right? And that's also a new and unique database that most people don't have access to.
It does seem that these girls, these Aquinas lures are always they're always like hanging around scientists, aren't they, George Webb? And there's a lot of scientists going in and out of this island, like Dr. Mayer's monkey, the one with the burn arm. There's another one in California that got burnt. There's these Aquinas lures. They're always around the smart guys.
Yeah, well, you always want to breed a really smart guy with a really beautiful woman. Hopefully, you'll get a really good-looking, smart Nobel Prize winning guy. Hopefully, you'll get Andy Duvall. Yeah. Hopefully, you'll get Brad Pitt winning a Nobel. You're a taller, better-looking version of Brad Pitt, and you have a better arm. So we know we've all got that, ladies. So if you want to, there's a genetic pool waiting for you there. You won't be personally delivered, though. That's the only bad part about Andy's, Epstein bank here. But anyway,
you won't catch me hanging around the island. No easy access. So we're continuing with the testimony. This thing gets into a lot of different stuff, guys. So bear with us. And it's like words from Epstein's own mouth of what he admits.
No speculation
on the island. Yeah.
No speculation. Yeah.
So as of medical advance, you are able for the first time to have custom-made medicine, but you can't do that without accessing a vast database of information. Even if you are the best doctor in New York or California, Rob Malone, or you can only read what you can read. You have 24 hours a day. The new sequences in biomedicine will allow you to access every publication that affects your area, and you don't have time to read it. So my company's algorithms will, in fact, digest the information as best they can currently and then spit out its recommendations, like coronavirus and remdesivir. So you'll have computer-generated solutions for medical problems, which is the next century's work on how to get people healthy. My real business has always been money. People want to know which companies to invest in, and you might have been lucky enough. I was poor, but if your parents had any money and they wanted to simply find the stock to buy or how to invest their money, again, they had to find a stockbroker or a local banker or someone they could go to and ask their advice. And that one person's advice was only as good as the college they went to or their experience in the business. Now, just as I, with my friend, or as a simple example years ago, if you had asked me, what is the name of George Washington's horse? I lived in Coney Island, blah, blah, blah. You had to go to a library to find out the name of George Washington's horse. I would then go back, make a report, and go to Google. So make a report, come to my school. And as you all know, right now we go to Google, and in a nanosecond, Google searches 10 billion documents for the names of George Washington's horse. And you can find out what the horse ate for breakfast on a certain day. So my company will then take the concept. You can also find out what Jeff Epstein was doing to try to
Now let me just throw in here. Let me say why this is important, Andy. because he's giving you, and we'll just stop it right there, but he's giving you biographical information to find that other person. We heard Coney Island. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's not far from the people who died from the Long Island serial killer murders, the LISK murders. This is why I wrote the book about Jeff Epstein and the LISK murders. The LISK murders, if you remember, I went there and researched all those. And they happened over a 20-year period of time. There was like 12, 14 different murders. And we had established that they were being the Coyote Ugly bar. If you remember the in the meatpacking district that in the movie Coyote Ugly, it's not called that, but that was the place where this motorcycle gang was, the Hells Angels, and the guy who ran the Hells Angels organization. I met there at that bar, so I know it's true, right? And they were shuttling these women who had come into New York, who wanted to become models and wanted to become actresses. They were shuttling them out to to Jeff Epstein's mansion in Long Island. My roommate in Times Square just happened to be a bada bing girl. She was on the cover of Playboy 3 times. Okay. She worked at Jeff Epstein's thing out on Long Island at his mansion. And he would hire these women who were actors and actresses as caterers for these these shows. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of sunshine in my eyes here. He would hire these people that were actors and he would hire these actresses, and that was his showcase. That was his showcase. Also, her boyfriend was in the Secret Service and worked for Bill Clinton in Harlem. Now, he wasn't always there. He would come in the apartment and eat all my food, and then they would stick me with the bill for all of his slovenly habits that I would have to buy all the cleaning fluid and everything that happened every month. But that's a different story. That's my problem with my roommate. But there was definitely recruiting going on. And the Secret Service, this is what I'm trying to say, the Secret Service was the ones that with the cameras, and through the State Department was the one doing the compromise activity out at the Manafort had a mansion out there as well with Podesta, and they were doing the shadier stuff, the BDSM type stuff, and then Epstein had a thing. And what I'm saying is, by the shrimp cocktail type things out on Long Island, they were showcasing. So people would drive out on the weekends from New York because they're working all week and they're sick of the smoke and sick of the traffic and the noise and so forth. So they would go out to this place. And this is where Epstein was showcasing these girls. And then later, they would have these weekend things where they would rent these large, huge houses that they weren't theirs. They would totally trash the house. And then at the end of it, there would be a murder. I wrote about this in LISK. Finding LISK is the name of the book. But they would have a 3-day thing, and they would rape the girls. And the last man, basically, on the last day, the Hells Angels would get to clean up. I'm sorry, but that's just the facts. On the third day, the Hells Angels would have the house on the Monday. They'd trash it, and they would kill the girl. They would spin the revolver, and they all raped the girl, and they would spin the revolver, and whoever the revolver pointed at had to kill the girl. That's how these 20 girls ended, or 12 or whatever, ended up in Long Island Sound. Now, the Long Island Sound union where these guys worked, right, was not far from where Jeff Epstein grew up. The Ukrainian mob was right there. Felix Sater grew up on that golf course, right? The Ukrainian mob that we've been talking about for so long was right there in that part of New York. Now, this tells a lot about the beginnings of Jeff Epstein coming up through the mob and then getting out of the mob, right, and being a runner and so forth, and then getting into the financials, getting away from the mob and getting over to the smart side of crime, which is more the Dalton School, where he's going to have the little Einsteins hack into for Bill Barr. The little Einsteins, if you remember, that Jeff Epstein had are these really smart 12-year-olds that know how to hack into the GTE database that Bill Barr was running and Donald Barr was running, that had all the metadata of all the phone calls of all the people coming and going in and out of Manhattan. And they were inviting them from their phone calls. They were inviting people up to the Stone Fortress. Jeff Epstein had a UN clearance. Again, so does Stephen Hatfield later on has a UN clearance. So I'm saying they're using all these things in combination for compromise. Jeff Epstein's little Einsteins hacked into the GTE database. How could the little Einsteins hack into the GTE database if they didn't have help? The reason why they said the little Einsteins did it is because if a 12-year-old is caught hacking into the GTE database, they say, "Oh, those little Einsteins, you know, they're always causing trouble," and that was Bill Barr's way of hiding this spying they were doing. And then Bill Barr is CIA, and he's using Jeff Epstein to compromise these people. That's when the invites went out. My roommate worked on the part of the daily shrimp cocktail ones during the day, but she also, you know, I hate to say it, but she was also over on 9th Avenue at strip clubs. Right, as a bada bing girl on Playboy. I go into I go in to rent an apartment, right, on 47th Street, right, 46th Street. I can't remember. Little Brazil. She was from Brazil, and there's pictures of all these Playboy covers, and then there's pictures of Sopranos, and I say, "Geez, you look a lot like this girl who's in the Sopranos. That's one of the bada bing girls, and that was filmed on 9th Avenue at the strip clubs." And then I looked over at the Playboy. I said, "Geez, you look a lot like this girl who's on the cover of Playboy." She goes, "That's funny because it is me." Right? So I know it was her. I know she wasn't bullshitting me. And I know she was going out with this Secret Service guy out to Epstein's like she told me she was. So my point here is, again, yes, pretty girls. Yes, compromise, but it's CIA driven. It's CIA driven, and it's hidden through the U.S. State Department.
Girls of the bada bing. There was that her, George Webb?
No. She's a Brazilian girl. You can go through them all. I'll tell you when she comes up.
I don't know what I'm going to find on these covers.
She had her two sisters come up who were both Brazilian, living in New York as well, and they would come over, and then we would buy 3 of everything. They would go to the store and buy 3 of everything, and I'm splitting the expenses with 4 people. I'm like, "Hey, I'm buying all the cleaning supplies here." And I think they're maids. The other 2 are like maids. So they're going through cleaning supplies like nobody's business. And I'm like, I got $750K I'm putting into citizen journalism, right? That was before I was in citizen journalism. But like, hey, ease up on the cleaning supplies here. What are you guys cleaning up?
We could have used them at the studio at a later date.
I said, "What are you guys cleaning up? Murder seeds?" I seriously remember telling them that. Anyway, continue, Andy, with the testimonies.
All right, here we go with the Jeff Epstein testimony. All right, so he just got done talking about George Washington's horse.
And that's Blueskin. And Blueskin is, of course, like Sterna, it reminds you that that's where anthrax antitoxins come from. And the anthrax vaccine. Just say it. Go ahead.
Is he getting into the encephalitis stuff?
Well, I'll say this: the whole library of all the toxins from the Duisburg scholars all started with horses because the attack vector was horses. The people who start the original Spanish flu, German agents infecting horses, right? German agents infecting horses about ready to be transported to Europe. So the fact that there's skullduggery and conspiracy involved in this goes back to 1916 and the Spanish flu. So here we go.
All right, I'm going to skip the Googling the George Horse Night, the last paragraph. But here we go. Unbeknownst to most people today, again, when I first started on Wall Street, I was a school teacher. The stock exchange traded a couple million shares per day, and that was a big, and if you had 100 million shares a day, it was a calamity. Now, every day, every minute, those numbers of shares are traded, but not by people. 75 or 80% of all the trading around the world, when I say trading, all the statistics you read about How many shares traded today is done by a computer? In fact, some of the computers trade thousands of times per second, buying and selling at small increments. So the speed at which decisions are made, you have speed by computers, but you need a search engine. Just like Google has a search engine for documents, a method to search the financial arena for the best investments in my financial arm of Southern Trust and the best medicine. So if again, it was me personally, this again hits very close to home. I'm leaving for New York after this meeting to go sit with the sequencers to see if I can save my friend. See, the sequencers are currently in New York. That's a little metadata point for you, George. And this is the first time in history that it's probably a chance, because most people don't know when they say you have lung cancer. Cancer is not really a thing. It's not like you see we used to the past 30 years. We know we had a disease. You had the flu or you had some type of liver disorder. Cancer is very different. Cancer is not a thing. It's a process. It's a process. What do I mean by that? It doesn't mean I have something in my lung that has a little C that says cancer. It means that my lung is doing something. It is a process. It is cancering. My lung is cancering, or my prostate, Lloyd Austin, is cancering. In my friend's case, his brain, bones, and liver are cancering. So it was someone with, I don't know what type of cancer would have brain, bones, and liver, George.
Well, stop right there, because here's again a chance. When we did the neighborhood news studio and you and Aaron founded that, one of the things Aaron was talking about is, hey, let's have all these other courses. Let's not just have 2 hours of Andy Dabala and George Webb in the morning with news. Let's have the Karma Docs of the world, America's Frontline Doctor, the only real America's Frontline Doctor. She's now no longer a part of that organization because of the massive misappropriation of funds to buy these huge beach houses. But let's have a session on that. Make your kid a doctor. Remember, we punished one of his kids. I can't remember. Maybe it was Miles. Maybe it was another one. But we punished his children, right, by making them sit through becoming a nurse or becoming a farmer or becoming an engineer. Remember, we tortured his children, right? But this is the thing that makes doctors. It's not sitting down and memorizing a whole bunch of muscles or a whole bunch of nerve endings at once. Yes, you have to do that. But the best way is to start with a case presentation and say, okay, let's just do this really quickly, Andy, for this friend of Jeff Epstein. This person has brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
This person has bone cancer. And this person has liver cancer. I'm going to say it's probably some form of myeloma, because myelomas start in the bone marrow for the most part, usually, and that affects the stem cells, and then that cancers everything else, and then it goes to the lymph nodes, and then it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Cancer has this ability to do that, and liver is a downstream filtering agent, and that's typically a secondary thing that happens from metastasis. You usually have these little metastatic growths in the liver, and you can go in and shoot them or cryogenically freeze them. If they're in the kidney, you can ablate them with a laser in the liver, so you don't need to necessarily have a liver transplant. So I'm going to go ahead and say, now here's where you can start doing searches, right? And you could say Jeff Epstein and myeloma, Jeff Epstein and liver cancer, Jeff Epstein and brain cancer, Jeff Epstein friend and liver cancer. As a citizen journalist, you have opportunities here to move the story forward, to move the investigation forward, which is what we are trying to do. We don't want to just be saying, okay, here's Jeff Epstein's testimony. Yes, we're beating the Fox News anchor to the punch. We are scooping Fox News. We're scooping Megyn Kelly. We're doing a worldwide exclusive. You're going to be the first people to get it. We don't just want to do that. We also want to engage the audience into this thing so we all can move the ball forward. So go ahead, Andy. I just want to say that.
The only
want to do.
person I can find right now that had melanoma was Colin Powell. But he died like a couple years ago, if I remember correctly. So not 100%.
Well, it could be Lev Parnas.
Yeah.
It could be Lev Parnas because he grew up in that area. It could be Igor Fruman. It could be Nathan Myhrvold, who goes on to then run Microsoft. who I thought had prostate cancer at one time. So and he goes to the island later on, and he's in the documents, as we'll see, the head of Microsoft, who is the go-between to Bill Gates. He's hiding the Bill Gates relationship. By the way, Bill Gates' wife, Melinda Gates, came out yesterday and said she met Jeff Epstein. And she was shocked and thought he was a horrible person right on meeting him for the first time. Nathan Myhrvold was the runner, and that's how he became CEO of Microsoft, as the runner between Jeff Epstein and Bill Gates. So we'll keep that in mind. And then as we go to the comments, people in the comments, you can be putting this in and we can be feeding this back to you real time of who this person might be. But I think this unlocks a lot, because now we'll trace this person, hopefully is alive still, and we'll be able to trace when he got sequenced, where he got sequenced. I'm going to say it's probably in Brookhaven, or we went out there on, they were doing a lot of compromise, not at Brookhaven Labs, but the Human Genome Project, not Woods Hole, but I'll think of it in a second, where the Human Genome Project was, where Crick and Watson were out there on Long Island.
So there, it is just, is it coincidence that Bill Gates visits Epstein Island, what was it, like just 20 something times or something like that, and they are literally working on the same projects. They're out in Africa trying to sequence genomes out in Africa. They're out in they're really trying. Bill Gates is trying to release mosquitoes in the Virgin Islands. Like, there's a bunch of overlap in their scientific projects. And I think it may be more about that than compromise, George Webb. I think you're right about that. So in the past, I'm going to continue on reading here. So in the past, unfortunately, anyone diagnosed with the disease for lung cancer, you could only treat them with lung cancer approved drug. Like I have breast cancer care in New York. So now it turns out that many females for breast care, you can treat it with things that were only used before prostate. And the only way they got to that is they realized that in certain studies in the Netherlands, just by these search engines, there had been good results based on computers being able to search the database, the solutions for specific types of problems.
Now, I want to stop right there. Thank you, Eddie. And please don't, I'm sorry I'm stopping you and it's rude, but here's where you have an Erasmus Lab lead. Here's where you have Amy DeGroot. Here's where you have an Epivax lead. Epivax, the whole story of Epivax is searching these little strings of amino acids of 10 to 12 amino acids long. It turns out that 10 to 12 amino acids tend to make the regional binding motif, what they call it. It's part of the regional binding domain that make the domain, the all-important domain, whether something can be repurposed from a prostate to a breast cancer. This reminds us of the Rails brothers doing prostate and breast cancer at Winber for the Winber charrette we did. So a lot of things are clicking here with domain, right? These same things were said with domain in the justification with DARPA domain. Now you can see what's happening here is the guys like Josh Lederberg, who are advisors to 7 presidents, are saying, well, what's the latest and greatest in the war on cancer? And they're saying, well, the latest strategy is to do different combinations with a supercomputer with these 12 or 10 different amino acids to play with the binding motif and see what happens with the binding motif to see if we can repurpose these drugs. Oh, great. Let's patent that. Let's get that going in a private laboratory. Let's be ahead of the curve on this. Then let's go ahead and establish a DARPA project where we can pour trillions of dollars of public money into the research, and then we'll siphon off all the findings. We'll siphon off all the findings down to Little St. James. That's what's going on here. Not about just girls, not about just compromise. So continue, Andy.
Yeah, the coincidence. I got the financial hub set right up next to the financial server set right next to the biomedical one, George Webb.
He talks about the servers. He talks about the servers here. Yep. Megan Kelly, if you want to dial in, please feel free to dial in, because I know we're scooping you, but you're more than welcome to dial in.
Why the Virgin Islands? Again, we have high-speed connections in St. Croix. So I have to beg both servers to hold my database information. The high-level people that Erica mentioned is I need high-level mathematicians to come down and help program the computers. And this is where you get into your AI, your Mints guy, correct? Some people actually have to be here.
Andy,
Go ahead.
Andy, could you stop? And Carmadoc, being the smartest, probably the smartest doctor, certainly the smartest frontline doctor, has said, "Don't make this the sexist neighborhood news." So I don't want to just say smart guy, beautiful woman. There's probably, I don't know, they're probably also parlaying, maybe the eggs from Madame Curie, who was still the only woman to win 2 Nobel Prizes, I think, and I don't know if another man has won 2 Nobel Prizes. And I'll let you know that I met Barbara McClintock, who did Jumping Jeans, who was a Nobel Prize winner that hadn't won. Nobody had won since Madame Curie. So let's never forget there's smart women out there as well in this field. So and there are the guys that are just good looking and dumb as a box of rocks. That's the Brad Pitt. Now, that's why we didn't have Brad Pitt as a co-host here, and we went with you, Andy, somebody who's smart and has the Brad Pitt looks.
And yeah, we're not trying to be. We're just letting you know how these guys think, Carmadoc. These smart guys like the beautiful women. What can you say? This is not us. This is from Epstein. I'm talking as Epstein.
Yeah, right.
So here,
thank you for clarifying.
Here we go. The gets into a mathematician. Some people actually have to be here and monitor the computers. And these algorithms, it's amazing but true, much of the work hopefully to be done later in life. So that 5-10 years away, when coronavirus is going on. So that 5-10 years away is the computers themselves will help redesign some of the computer programs. Just like in the cars, we first built some computers to help us manufacture cars. Now the computers are helping to design. They in fact design their own little parts. In the new version, you can actually print out, just like a fax machine started 20 years ago. You could have the computer design and the part and make it. It actually prints parts. So he's getting into 3D printing. So Southern Trust will be basically building up a database searching mechanism to search things on an individual basis, both in the medical field and the financial field. And this is where I think he wants Sergey Brin to come in, correct? He needs the Google billionaire who has the biggest search engine in the world to help instruct him how to build his own little search engine for financial and biomedical purposes.
Yeah, and the 23andMe database. Because I remember when I was doing clinical trials, and one of the hardest things to do is get what they call the cohort, recruit the cohort. But if you already have 23 million people, or let's say, I think they stopped at 14 or 15, 16 million. I think their goal was to get 23 million. Let's say you have that. You can send an email out to everybody that you know and say, do you want to be a part of this new prostate drug study or whatever? Or did you know, and they send this to me, I'm a member of 23andMe. They send me the thing that's saying, hey, here are all the things that, your family history and where you came from Africa and so forth. But then they also then say, here are things that you should watch, your markers, right? And
so they give you cancer markers and stuff you need to be looking out for.
And you can join a study. So Sergey Brin is in the catbird seat for doing clinical trials. These are really hard to find. We had to go get ads on various drug sites. Sloan Kettering was one of our customers. You got it. So you go there as cancer, right? So Sloan Kettering is controlling that process. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. This is opening it up so everybody who uses Google now can search on their genome, find that there's a cohort that Sergey has. Now we can say, oh, we already know a trial that's going on. We already know a drug that's being applied. You can get in on this so you don't have to die. So this is what they're marketing here, is the longevity idea.
All right, we continue. Again, it's an
Karma says she's just kidding us, but it's good to remind ourselves. It's good to remind ourselves that in the second hour, we're going to have things like neighborhood health. and we'll have people on like a Karmadoc who can say, hey, here are things that I've done to reduce inflammation. Here are, let's say, give us key words to search for. Let's say we're looking for food toxicity or something, and then you're saying, well, here's these antibodies that are being created, these IgG4, which is the non-specific bad kind of response that you don't want, or here's this IgE response or whatever. And we'll help people understand inflammation and food allergies and so forth. So that's what we hope to bring in the second hour, maybe the third hour of Neighborhood News. And eventually we will get through the Epstein testimony when I stop interrupting Eddie Dubal.
No, you're okay. That's what we're doing here, George Webb. We got a couple hours.
Okay.
Okay. Again, it's an exciting area. That the idea is that the diseases that affect the local population. I do lots of work in Africa with. He doesn't mention Bill Gates, but he does lots of work in Africa.
Who else doesn't he mention? Who else doesn't he mention? He doesn't mention Gail Smith of USAID, does he?
He does. He does not.
If you want to be a real active participant in this, you can be doing Gail Smith and Epstein in a compound search right now, and find a URL where it's mentioned and put it into the chat, and then Andy will click on it, and then boom, you'll be a part of the show. So
beautiful. To back up, Africa is for me a fertile ground for experimentation because it has been so underdeveloped. It is not burdened with the current system. What do I mean? He can take advantage of it, is what he means. When telephone companies now come to places like Senegal, where I was a couple months ago, they don't put copper in the ground. They don't have to worry about laying cables and going to everyone's house. They leapfrog the old systems, going directly to cellular. So those Senegal and Ivory Coast are poor countries. 70% of the people have cell phones because they are able to not deal with the local inbred telephone companies who had to charge a ridiculous sense of money because they had already laid all this pipe and copper in the ground. The same thing here. Africa has almost no medicine. It's difficult, but with searching as opposed to testing people everywhere, it's not the same. Not everyone needs an aspirin. Not everyone needs the same aspirin or the same amount of aspirin. The idea would be to build up a personal medical database for lots of people. That's it. And ask as many questions about the subject. I enjoy it. They do get into Q&A with some of the panels, and some of the questions are pretty good if you want to keep reading, George.
Yeah, I do want to keep reading. I just want to say here again, as a citizen journalist, as soon as he drops a name like Senegal, you can search for December 2011 or November 2011 Senegal or Ivory Coast, and then see if he was there with Gail Smith. Now we have a question for Gail Smith. Hey, Gail Smith, what were you doing with Jeff Epstein in Senegal? Was it an HIV drug that you were testing? Was it an anti-Ebola drug that you were testing? In Western Africa, as you know, being close to Ghana, where our orphanage was, there was an Ebola breakout there. What was he testing? Was it, Congo Crimea hemorrhagic fever? Again, filling out the Jeff Epstein testimony from his testimony himself, right? You can do it as a citizen journalist as we go along here. So let's go into the Q&A, because I've read the Q&A and it's pretty good.
I do. Some modeling agent, Jean-Luc Brunel, was flying to Senegal when he died, and he was connected to Epstein. I don't know. That's as far as I could find. So,
well, I'll tell you a story about Jean-Luc Brunel. Peter worked with him, and regrets not being able to, flag the trafficking. But it's hard to know how old models are just looking at them. But he was actually in an apartment paid for by Jean-Luc Brunel in Paris, I believe, or maybe it was Italy, maybe it was Milan. It's tough to know. But I mean, again, we're never far away in our story from people who we work with. And this was the finder. Now we know that Jean-Luc Brunel was the finder in Europe, and he might have found Melania, believe it or not, when he brought her to Paris and went and sent her to Milan. So, and Nathan Myhrvold, I think this is, you're going to Nathan Wolf here. I don't know if that's, I can't see who that person is.
Oh, that's Jean-Luc Brunel.
That's Jean-Luc. Yeah. But all these guys are connected. You want to build up this cadre of names, of entities that are not the ones that they want to shove down your throat in the page 6 type media. They want to say, it's Rachel Chandler, she dated Eminem, she dated, whoever, Prince Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Stay away from those. Stay closer to the people that are involved in the infrastructure, in the backgrounds, and that's where the best metadata comes from, in my opinion. Continue.
All right. Here, let me pull it back up for everyone. All right, so this is the Q&A of the Epstein testimony. So Mr. Simmons, who's on the board, good afternoon. I get the financial part. I mean, you got $1 billion to invest. You search for the best investments and you invest other people's money. The medical part, I'm not sure I get as yet. I mean, I'm not going to ask you how much something like that would cost because it sounds like it would be really expensive, but who are you catering to? The elites. I mean, people are going to come to and say, you know what? I have an ailment. I need you to search and see if there's a cure. This is Epstein's response. No, it's the drug companies. To develop a new drug now costs $1 billion because you sort of start from scratch and it's really like trial and error in your backyard trying to figure out which piece fits in this screw. So the drug companies spend the first 5 years testing all the different parts to see if it'll work on this drug, on this disease. The drug companies would much rather have my computer do the trials and errors. Doesn't that sound a lot like COVID-19, George Webb?
Domain.
So, Mr. Simmons, but you are not testing anything. You are basically just searching for already tested products. Mr. Epstein, the algorithms themselves will almost be like a chemistry lab in the computer. In the old days, when you had to test for something, you had to actually build it to see if it would work. When the Wright brothers built their airplane, they flew it and crashed. They flew it, and that's when they changed the wing. And now what you do is you design it in the computer. The computer inside all the new spaceships are all designed by saying, here's the wind, here's the gravity, and the product comes out at the end. So there's this big drug companies that want to know what's the most likely pathway to hit this type of disease. And Simmons, go ahead.
And I will say this, that is domain. That's not kind of like domain. That's an exact match of Bob Malone's DARPA's domain, period. Used in COVID. So there's a direct link between Jeff Epstein and what he was doing in 2012 in DARPA Adept, DARPA USAID Predict, and DARPA domain, period. Continue.
So, Mr. Simmons, why would it take 5 years before local folks could be trained in doing this sort of? And Epstein cuts him off. It won't take 5. It will be growing simultaneously because the mathematics, it's like the new programs. For example, the last Windows program that came out last week, Windows 8, took 600 people 6 years ago to do. Now it's not that many people, but you need high-level programmers. So I'd like to have young people, I'm a teacher by heart, engaged early on. But the programming initially will take time to get up and running and been on testing. It will sort of becomes a model for its performance. Thank you. The chair, Mr. Allen. Good afternoon, Mr. Epstein. I've been listening to you quite intense. You are asking.
Can I just make a quick comment? Even the stuff like Jeff Epstein drops, like it took Windows 8 6 years for 600 programmers. Mm-hmm. That's something that they don't publicize, right? That's something that somebody tells you on a private plane when you're flying with Nathan Myhrvold and you're trying to hide your connection to Bill Gates, right? And then he says he needs higher level programs. Jeff Epstein doesn't know that. Jeff Epstein has to be told that by Nathan Myhrvold, the CEO of Microsoft. So it's just showing you how Gates is using and hiding and proxying his relationship with Epstein using Myhrvold. Continue, please.
It's almost like Gates is Epstein at this point. But
I don't know what the shoe sizes are, but there seems to be a similarity in the shoe usage. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's getting to the exemptions. We are aware that they did bring an amendment to the legislator that would the legislator actually pass legislation that would reduce the number of employees. I don't think I need to get into the number of employees, do I?
No, but Carmadoc here saying she worked on St. Croix in 2015, 12, and 2013, and there was no fast Ethernet to Little St. James. Well, again, this is why I go to the place. I went to Little St. James to the harbor where you take the ferry over to St. John's. and I saw this big ass tower that they had put in. And Jeff Epstein actually paid for that tower. I don't know when the tower went in, but they had microwave communications, high speed link microwave communications that had gone in at some point. I even in the film, I took a picture of the tower. They also had line of sight. Now, not necessarily for high speed communications, but some of the times in military communications, you want direct infrared communications because you don't want intercept. And James Biden's house on Water Island I went there, had line of sight to Epstein's island 8 miles away. That's really important if you want to get into classified programs. At the highest level of top secret programs, they have these codes, op codes, they call them, operational codes. If you don't key in the right op code, you ain't getting into the program.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't getting into the program.
So there is high-speed internet, but you don't have access to
and
it.
Also, well, I'm just saying, it used to be
unless you got the Q clearance.
The ship I was on was directly over the old submarine bullpen that used to be there during World War II. Mm-hmm. And Water Island was the gunnery, had the gunnery purview over the bay. And Little St. James was this kind of the first outlier island that you encountered. And there was a tunnel complex in Water Island for moving the guns around. They moved the guns around so they could have 360-degree line of fire. And there was a tunnel out to, or a submarine race out to Little St. James as the first point of encounter for any kind of invader coming in.
Okay.
Plus, if you go across the way from Little St. James over to St. John's, that's British Virgin Islands, right? That's Andrew. Andrew has diplomatic immunity where the shark encounter, and I had a little lemon shark, another smaller lemon shark encounter when I was walking over to see Andrew. Literally, I'm walking. It wasn't St. John's. Well, I think I was on St. John's walking over to I can't remember what the British Virgin Islands was, but you can see it. You can walk over to it. I encountered another shark, the smaller lemon shark there as well. I'm just saying that the reason why there's a British Anglo thing going on here, and exfiltration of secrets to the British, and then the British are brokering all this stuff all over everywhere, is because on it wasn't Tedros Island. I'm trying to remember the name of the island. There's a massive UK British facility on that island next to with the US military. So this is an exfiltration operation to the British military. Everything you've heard about Andrew with Virginia Guffrey and all that, it's all smoke and mirrors to cover this exfiltration to the British. And who's getting the information to broker under diplomatic immunity? The British royal family, for crying out loud. And we know Fergie was involved there as well with the Path Foundation. So this isn't, oh, Andy's being randy and playing around on me. No, this is being randy with all of the secrets of the United States government and selling them off to the British royal family for pennies on the pound.
Yeah, so here's a map of the Virgin Islands right here. And here's St. John's. I'm trying to find Little St. James. And this actually,
there's an island that they did the rehearsals. I'm trying to remember the name of the island. Yeah, I see the Global Crossing had the fiber. Yeah, Scott from Tampa, Southcom or CENTCOM area. He's saying Global Crossing, because of the name implies, laid a lot of this transatlantic fiber. And if you remember, I went to the house that just blew up with James Yu, YOO. He was the Global Crossing guy. Scott worked with Global Crossing and worked with, they got bought by Verizon. But there's a big island there, gigantic island. It's the biggest island in the Bahamas, where the British Navy did, like the Ark Royal and the Hermes and all this. They did all these naval exercises with our U.S. Navy right off the shelf there. So that's why I say this is not what you think it is. This is a massive exfiltration operation to the British royal family.
Well, also just one before we go back to the testimony, you were digging into talking about the submarines and stuff. That's something that Nathan Wolf was working on with Ghislaine Maxwell. It's called the Terramar Project, and they were mapping the world's ocean floor. And if you're involved in all these projects and deep state submarine, you're spying on people. It just leads more to like them meeting at all these places and kind of just trying to go.
Andros Island is where the British had the big thing. And Andy, you're right with the Terramar. See, this is why they were trying to this is why Ghislaine Maxwell was trying to renegotiate they had a thing called zone of control, or zone of control, I'd be a ZOC, which was if you had used some area over 50 miles, you could claim, like the fishing rights off of Nova Scotia, you could claim out zone of control, you could claim out to 50 miles. And then they were going to say, well, if we had fishing rights, that means we have everything below in order to do the oil, gas, and minerals, trace minerals and rare minerals. Her thing, if you look at what she was proposing to the UN, was let's go back to the old 12-mile limit of international waters. And the reason why that's important is they wanted to buy up these leases from the old islands, from the old military bases. And that gives you the size of the island plus 12 miles in all directions, right? And yeah, the Terramar Project, this is what this was all about. Again, people forget that Ghislaine Maxwell ran this program with Jeff Epstein. You know, it's like, I didn't make the presentations to the UN. Ghislaine Maxwell did with
Nathan Wolf of Metabiota,
with the guy with the blackberries running around with the Hunter Biden. Come on, man. I mean, these are important devices.
All right, here, yeah, this is the Terramar Project. Everything's starting to link together with Epstein. Everything we've been working on the past couple years with this Southern Trust and these servers and this DNA projects, everything's starting to come together, George Webb. But here we go. We're going to go ahead.
I like it, and we may have to go over, Andy. I mean, we may have to go over. This is so good. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Mr. Allen. Yes, I understand, but some of the computer models that you discuss, it's so way out. Is this your thinking, or is this something that is on the market that you're truly trying to tap into? And Mr. Epstein says, I'm not a madman, so it might appear that way. I like that line. I wanted to put that on a t-shirt. Mr. Allen, no.
I'm not a madman.
Mr. Allen, no. I'm just asking this if this is your thought brand new, or if there is something out there that you are trying to bring it here. Excuse me. Mr. Epstein, both. There are products just beginning. They have not yet been fully developed. Database mining is a very product is probably the wrong word. The database mining, which mining means in the past you got to dig into the ground. Here, the concept of database mining is very well established, but not in these two areas. Normally, for example, as you know, when you go in your computer, it might target you for a specific type of advertisement because it knows that after you've been searching for French fries, sorry, my reading is a little off. I'm trying to read
hey, Andy, think about it. Why is he asking about searching for French fries? Right? Why is he thinking about French fries? He's thinking about cholesterol. He's thinking about these drugs, right? You've got the battle between Mark Kulak did a thing about it, the battle for these anti-cholesterol drugs.
Ozempics and all that stuff nowadays.
Ozempics now, yeah. But then there's some. I'll have the other two. The biggest battle over patents.
Statins
happened over these statin drugs, and I'll have it for you in 1 second. Continue.
All right. Normally, or here we go. French fries. So they mined all the people in the area who is looking for French fries and said, you know, Randolph seems to like that, so we'll send him a message. So the concept itself is a very well established, using the medical really the next couple of years. Mr. Allen, I have no more questions to share. How did how do you get around all the proprietary medical information, though? I mean, how does that? And Epstein says, because you initially start out, most people, they opt in or opt out. Sometimes they, even for the first sequencing, potentially to answer your question, when the human, this is great. He starts talking about the Human Genome Project. When the Human Genome Project is first begun, a question came in: if they sequence my genome, my personal genome, is that information tied to Jeffrey Epstein, or will it be anonymous? And everyone whose genes get sequenced has the right to say, I don't want my name associated with my gene, because maybe if I have something that's bad, I might have a rocker gene from a woman predisposing me to breast cancer. I won't get health insurance. So the decision of having your name associated with sequence is your decision. However, the sequence then goes into the big pile and says the person who had that sequence was responsive to this drug. So there is no name attached. So there's no privacy issue. If it turns out that most people don't mind having their names, I was surprised. But most people say, look, if I'm doing something good for society and it's helpful, you say yes. I've had a problem, and if I can help others, my name could be attached. That's a decision I would make. The chair. So it's a biomedical Google that Epstein, yes. The chair that tracks genes, preference gene receptivity to different medications in order to make doctors more efficient. Mr. Epstein, yes, and drugs more efficient. The chair, but how do you get paid, Mr. Epstein? The drug companies, instead of having, as I said, imagine having your own little chemistry lab and a computer as opposed to having 1,000 people. So they pay me for the algorithm. The chair, so they pay you a membership fee to access your server, or they pay you for an algorithm that you actually sell them instead. Mr. Epstein, there will be just like in any other product, because there are different algorithms. Some will be outright purchases, probably the simple ones. There will be leases for longer runs, and most people will be coming back. Sometime, if you want to know, just like a search engine in an answer to one question, so you get paid for that one piece of advice. Ongoing advice or exclusive rights like drug companies might want to have for a specific answer. The chair. And these mathematicians build these algorithms to build themselves, or they build algorithms specifically for whatever question is posed. Because I know you mentioned, I still want to know why you have a server here, though. Mr. Epstein, I'd like to have everything here for security purposes and blackmail. As you, Andy,
Plus law enforcement, because the anti-money laundering laws, as Scott makes a mention here, the AML laws don't have a long arm provision into the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's why all the tax dodges are there, right? And
oh yeah, you're right. That's where
a
you
lot
get
of
it. Okay.
right, and neither does the British Virgin Islands in terms of the Brits either. So the best exchange is actually Jeff Epstein walking over on St. John's to the little cove where the lemon shark almost bit me in the leg. Not the big one, not the big lemon shark, but the little one, and give it to Andy over on his sloop John B. Give it to Andy and take the thumb drive over to the British Virgin Islands. It's literally, you can do it on a little catamaran. You could do it in 10 minutes, right? That you're going from one banking system to another. And guess what? It's all outside of international bank laws, right? It's completely hidden behind front organizations like the Southern Trust. That's what this is all about.
Epstein Island at this point, it's just like a one-stop shop for the elites, like secret maneuvers. Hey, come to our bring your bag to the island and we'll throw it into our little algorithms here and mix up your money and you'll make money and it won't be taxed. Give us your DNA, any medical ailments you ever have in the future, we'll fix them for you. And while you're getting your DNA ran through the sequencer, you have a little boy or girl here you can have some fun with, and then you can go on.
And we'll invest all your money into these private DARPA technologies, and you'll never pay taxes. We'll set up all the front companies for you because we do that every day here. And we can be exploring the depths of all these areas around our current military bases that we currently have with the Brits, like Wanda Fuqua, and not Wanda Fuqua, but like San Diego, out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, wherever, Sri Lanka, everywhere in the old British Empire. Just get a compass out and make a 12-mile radius. And we're now saying anything beyond that 12 miles, is fair game, right? Any little atoll, we can plant the British flag. We can now call in the dogs and start mining or start drilling.
Does I know they were talking about like data mining and stuff. That's what Bitcoin does, correct? I wonder if there's any Bitcoin mining going on these servers as well, because
Well, that's the other thing. That's the other
2012
thing
was
you
right
need.
before it launched, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing you need. A lot of these wacky, houses and stuff that Epstein had on his island are just so much obvious fronts to distract you, right? I'm wondering, like, okay, where's the little miniature nuclear power plant? Epstein and Gates were really big into these small modular reactors. They call them SMRs. Again, if I put an SMR on the island, I don't need to worry about a power outage. If there's an international banking outage or a bank holiday, I still keep churning away on Bitcoin. We had a thing up in Ohio with Kolomoisky, and the whole the whole grid went down, and Kolomoisky still, all the lights are on still at this old Warren Steel factory. How could that possibly be if he didn't have an alternative power source going on there? I don't think it's the windmills out there, right? There's a lot of windmills in Ohio. I think those are fronts for the small nukes that Bill Gates makes. You got to test them somewhere. Where do you test them? Hey, an island is the perfect place because that's the thing that could get cut off from power. So yeah, Bitcoin mining, server farms, yeah, you got it. And there's tunnels all over the place. The U.S. Navy already dug those in the 40s. So here we go.
All right, Mr. Epstein, I'd like to have everything here for security purposes. As you know, everybody is hacking servers. The only way really, unfortunately, to make sure you are secure is to have location-wise once you put your server. So that's what you're talking about. They can just cut off if it's kind of, if you have to have your queue clearance to get the high-speed internet and all that. If something happens, you just cut off the internet. No information's getting out. No one's getting in. It's a nice thing to have a little private server on your own private island. The chair. So your server will be more or less your vault rather than a server to power anybody else anywhere else. Mr. Epstein. Yes. The systems, everything is interconnected. But again, the only real way to have certain types of things is servers that are not connected to the internet directly. The chair. How do you anticipate that this business will grow so that it would actually affect employment? Because if things go as I planned, it will need a significant number of people, hopefully, again, probably between 5 to 10 years or maybe more, operate at a virtual laboratory. So you need lots of people. You need to watch and help the mathematicians. It's accessing the computers and training people to operate the systems. As you know, if you thought about it years ago, 20 years ago, if we said we are going to have a computer, it's impossible. I can't do it. I'm a pretty good mathematician, but now students coming up can program things that were unthinkable years ago. The chair in the office space will be there, or in office space. When I get into the office space stuff. Yes, you want the access. So that's really for the trading aspects. It turns out, and again, it's an interesting fact that computers that trade, the algorithms, that's a different part of the business. The computers that trade, it makes a tremendous difference if you have fiber and high-speed fiber, but not high-speed fiber. So just as a silly example, there was a company in New York that moved its offices 3 streets closer to the stock exchange and paid millions of dollars to upgrade their space so they can be 3 streets closer, because then they get an edge. Mr. Chair, if I might follow up on something that you asked, sure. So what then do you see as the economic benefit to the territory? Mr. Epstein, well, obviously, hopefully, I mean, you are suggesting that it will be at least 5 years, maybe even longer before you start ramping up employment. Mr. S is pretty much asking him, why little St. James? This doesn't make sense. Mr. Epstein, I think there will be revenues of a considerable number of millions of dollars at the end of the 5th year. But to ramp up, these are high dollar revenue items to the company. So obviously in terms of taxes and in terms of employment. You want me to keep getting into this stuff? I believe there's some stuff here at the bottom that's a little more.
Well, I wanted to say that, back to the French fries comment, there was a anestat called Crestor. There was one that the Abbey V or Abbott Labs had Humira.
Mm-hmm.
And then this Centocor thing, which was Hillary Kaprowski, the guy with the polio vaccine, along with Stanley Plotkin, Inovio, and Stanley Plotkin, Vical, right? He, this is the big argument over monoclonal antibodies, the antibody paradox. Mark Kulak called it at Houstonic.live. And all of this keeps going back to Brett Weinstein. This is where Brett Weinstein and Meryl Nass are telling us now, don't go into this. I don't want you to go into the deep state. I don't want you to investigate all this stuff to figure out all this Epstein stuff. Let's all talk about, what we want to talk about right now. Well, we're not going to. We're going to keep investigating this. Bob Malone, put out all your domain emails from 2020. Bob Malone, put out all your HCQ emails, put out all your ivermectin, put out all your famotidine, put out all your remdesivir emails. Just publish it all. You have a Transparency Institute. Just publish it all. So go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I keep interrupting you, but I think it's important that we reach out to hey, Meryl Nass, publish all of your emails to Bruce Ivins. Publish all your emails to anyone inside of Fort Detrick from 1991 until 2008 with like Sina Bavari or Bob Malone or whoever else, or Stephen Hatfield. Here's your chance to, make it rain. If you want unity and togetherness, you have to show transparency. If you want unity and trust, you have to show transparency. Make it rain. Make it rain with emails. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Yeah, put your stuff out there so we can go through all your research yourself and we can test it ourselves. Let the scientific community decide for themselves. Don't hide behind a notebook. But here we go. We got Epstein. This stuff's a little important. He gets into like some like the Iceland and how they like through the blood banks get people's DNA as well. So, Mr. Epstein, again, I would like as many as possible, frankly, but the idea is how well will a product this mechanism take, especially because it's medical. You don't want to sell something before it's ready. And once it's ready, then there would be people in the marketing department. There will be a bunch of other things. So it's difficult to put a number on it. How do you market that? Well, for the medical things through the drug companies, as well as certain medical NIH, the hospital divisions, the medical countries. Iceland is one of the few countries, and that's another discussion at some point, because Iceland is an isolated community and they have 50 years of genetic information. So everyone in Iceland has a genetic sequence, and you can then see what's happening. The children, what was really inherited. Is breast cancer inherited, not inherited? Is schizophrenia, by simply looking at all the data that was accumulated. Places, frankly, like St. Thomas are the perfect place to sequence people because it's so isolated. You're able to get much better data than ever before. And it also ends up, and that's one of the advantages of being here as opposed to New York. So they don't like the melting pot per se, because they can't figure out what the data means. The chair. But when I think of genetic sequencing, and I know we are getting way out on a limb, Mr. Epstein, no, ask the chair. I mean, I would think that you would have to have some DNA sampling of these people going back for 50 years. And 50 years ago, we didn't have that type of technology. So how do you, people have died. How do you trace that? How do you do sequencing of somebody who is no longer here? Mr. Epstein, in Iceland, they've kept the sequencing. They started taking blood. So they have kept blood samples from everyone. That was very forward thinking. So they were simply able to get the sequence out of the blood. The chair got you. That was confusing. Mr. Epstein, yes, it's 50 years of data. It's the only country. It doesn't make them any healthier at the moment, but they have tremendous amounts of data, but also no information. And one of the things I noticed on the news yesterday, George Webb, and they do this all the time. We're out of blood. We're out of blood. Come donate your blood. So I was, after reading this, I was wondering, I wonder if they're like getting our blood now and running our gene sequencing through our blood bank, just like Epstein's saying right here.
Yeah, I knew the lawyer who was doing the American Red Cross case in Portland. This is when the HIV was breaking out, and the tainted blood case, and they paid a big settlement in Portland for the American Red Cross. So I know the American Red Cross, and again, I don't have to have a legal agreement. I can have all the legal protections in the world. All I need is one Jordan Walker to go in and grab the thumb drive, right? I need one Jordan Walker with 5 minutes access, 5 minutes access to the computer, and I walk out with all of the genomes. One Jordan Walker is all I need, right? With an access card. And this is exactly, people said, oh, you're saying Jordan Walker, that could never happen. This is exactly what happened with 23andMe, which is Sergey Brin's wife, which is Wojo Howitz, or whatever her name is, Wojo. All 16 million profiles walked out the door with 23andMe, including me and my family. So it can happen, and all I need is one Jordan Walker. Is that why James O'Keefe doesn't want to talk about the Pfizer org chart anymore? Right? Is that why? So we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this. We're going to go to anthrax. We're going to go to doping the air filters. You're going to be surprised when we talk about the Sandy Hook case and the connections to anthrax testing at Yale Medical. I'm not saying the kids all had meningitis, but they all had something, and they were all being treated from Yale Medical School. And Lanza's mother worked at DARPA at Yale. So we're going to go to that story in a minute. We got to finish this. We got to finish this Epstein story. Continue.
So Epstein has mentioned the Human Genome Project like a bunch of times in this document. And you think he has firsthand knowledge working with the people on the Human Genome Project as well, George?
Yes, I do.
Like he's just freely just talking about it, and just like he was.
There was 10% of the genome that was hidden, and it was all the longevity genes. If you look at, and again, Scott on here is PhD's an expert in telomerase and telomeres. All those were hidden, and then the genes toward the near the centromeres, where the cell splits with the mitotic spindle splits. Those were hidden as well. Why? Because those are the secrets of all the disorders for cancer. So the centromere genes were hidden, the centriole middle pole point, if you will, for mitosis, and the telomere genes were hidden until very recently. And who's the person who gives them to us? Kevin McKernan. You know, in a drop on a Friday afternoon over a Labor Day weekend. Thanks, Kevin McKernan. Thanks, Kevin McKernan. No, these have been hidden for decades, since the beginning of the Human Genome Project, for a private trove of genes for the elites.
All right, we continue with the Epstein testimony. So, Chair, wow. Mr. Epstein, because now they have 300,000 people and all their ancestors, now what do we do with it? It was the same problem when we had the human genome. It was a book of 3 billion letters, and it took 10 years to do and $3 billion to do it. $3 billion to do it, and only 10 years ago. That same sequence, you can now walk into your doctor and have it done for $65. You can sequence your entire genome for $65. Ms. Maduro, I have one question for legal counsel. Through the chair, may I ask a question to legal counsel? With respect to the fact that the governor has vetoed the proposed legislation, how will that impact us in as much as we are in a public hearing and this board is going to have to later decide moving this application forward without the approved legislation? And by the way, we didn't read this part in the very beginning, but they get into how much Jeff Epstein has donated to the Virgin Islands and how much money he has given to them, and that's how they're going to surpass the legal legislation. It's just, how much more money are you going to donate, Jeff? You remind on the amount of employees. As you want me to skip over that part, George?
That's fine. I think it's obvious to anybody hearing this today, Andy, that hopefully we've completely dispelled the myth about the things that people are trying to, the Wurlitzers that are being spun up about sexual trafficking and even compromise. Hopefully we've shown you through the knowledge and through the words of Jeff Epstein himself, it's all about the databases. It's all about the genome. It's all about genetic engineering. It's all about CRISPR. It's all about investing in CRISPR and these technologies. It's all about taking advantage of this new frontier of knowledge. And hopefully this is disabused anyone out there who thinks somehow that it's the Epstein Island is about sex trafficking. Hopefully you'll never say that again. So
Well, let me read this one last part because it gets into your little the Nobel Prize winners and stuff like that. So, any other questions, Mr. Epstein? I'll be more than happy in some other form to sit down and say, fine. In fact, some of the scholarship money that I have given before here in St. Thomas was to try and find children to go visit Harvard, encourage them. One of the things I did 5 years ago is I brought a whole bunch of Nobel Prize winners here to St. Thomas for lectures at the university. Again, so kids can see they don't have to be in the music business. Science is fun and exciting. So Ms. Simmons, one of our board members is a provost at UVI. I don't know I don't know what UVI is.
University of Virgin Islands, yeah.
Okay. So we certainly will have him get in touch with you and see that the kind of programs could be developed in conjunction with UVI to train mathematicians. So they're trying to use UVI as Epstein's own like little personal school. Not only mathematicians, in fact, it's a longer discussion. I'm willing to have as many discussions anybody here would like to have on the record, off the record. But the Apple computer sitting in front of the chairman has more teaching ability than all the teachers in St. Thomas. Blah, blah, blah. It talks about the Khan Academy and other things. But yeah, he brought...
It also talks about Florida Virtual University. And these are important things because the Khan Academy is sort of the CIA kind of leveler, for all of the Muslim countries. They want to make that the go-to spot, the one-stop shop for go-to countries for Muslim education. If you get a little bit further, he'll talk about Florida Virtual University. Now get into where he starts talking about chromosomes here, up a little bit on one.
Sorry, I just messed that up.
The top of the page. Again, I'm trying to disabuse everybody of the notion that somehow Jeff Epstein about Little St. James's sex trafficking. F. You get an F as a journalist if you ever say that again, because you have no excuse now. You have no excuse. Continue.
I agree with you, George Webb. So I don't understand how. Here, I'll read his whole comment. Mr. Epstein, not only mathematicians, in fact, it's a longer discussion. I'm willing to have as many discussions. Here, I'll skip that part. There's something that I would always encourage adults to do, as I would encourage all children, is something that seems that some people know about and some might not. It's called the Khan Academy. Now, if you haven't seen it, you should go on the line. It teaches every subject you learn in high school. You can watch it when you want. It's simple. You don't feel embarrassed if you don't understand it for the first time because you can play it over and over again. You can blog it with other children or people your own age to learn the same subject or maybe having the same problems you have. I don't understand how meiosis works or mitosis in biomedicine. So I can blog now and say, who else? Can someone explain to me how the chromosomes split? And they get answers. So yes, it's a tremendous amount of things to be done.
And I think that just goes to show you what I was saying before. Where is his mind as far as the Human Genome Project's concerned? Chromosome splitting, meiosis, and mitosis, right? That's where are those hidden genes? In the center of the centromere and at the ends with the telomeres, with the telomerase. So again and again and again, it shows the state of mind of Jeff Epstein. So now back to the Pfizer org chart, and we'll move off this for a second, and we'll go to the maps. You may remember I go up to Sandy Hook in 2017. It's basically because I had to leave the house because somebody wanted to have a date with somebody. So on Tinder. So I went up to Sandy Hook, and remember and we'll hold it right there. On June 4th, Scott Pelley of 60 Minutes decides to go after me 2 days before January 6th. Why? Because we have all these citizen journalists on the Potomac, right? Andy, you were there, right? So that could be why he took me out on January 4th, because we're the only citizen journalists in town that are going to say, hey, wait a minute, there's all these four psych ops people here with Emily Rainey, and they're loading up buses. It seems like a slaughter pen. It seems like they're going to try to slaughter pen people into the Capitol to get them arrested, right? We're the only ones saying that at that time, okay? That could be why he took me out. But why did Scott Pelley throw in on that January 4th thing, the Sunday before January 6th? Why did he throw in Sandy Hook? And I always wondered about that. Why he threw in Sandy Hook? That's not my story. That's Alex Jones' story of saying Sandy Hook deniers. And they had the Truth for Sandy Hook guy come on. And the reason I always thought is because I went there and told a completely different story. They were trying to associate me with Alex's story, but my story was he had help. Lanza had help. There was, when I went up there, I took the train up there, up to New Haven, rented a car, went out to Sandy Hook, went through Oxford, which is where one of the people died, right, in the anthrax thing, and didn't receive a letter. Explain that, FBI. I'll be back to that in a second, the Lundgren murder. But not too much farther, about 13 miles further, you go over the Housatonic River. Housatonic River, everyone. There's a guy named Housatonic Live that does a lot of stuff on this topic. So my point being is that they were all linked together with some kind of meningococcal, all these kids, these 20 kids were linked together with some kind of meningococcal irregularity, sort of like polio. At that time, I thought it was polio or some kind of encephalitis of some type. But what ends up happening in anthrax is that the anthrax actually bores a hole through this hard surface area of the spine, I believe, through the dura. Anyway, it gets into the cerebral spinal fluid and causes an infection and a lumping and a swelling. And it always happens at a different place in the spinal cord. So some of the kids may not walk well. Other kids have problems with their hand-eye coordination. But then other kids closer to the brainstem had speech problems and hearing problems. And this was the 20 kids. And they were all associated with the Yale Medical School. Now, I saw a thermopsical saying that the gal who runs WHO's aunt is at the Yale Medical School. And the Yale Medical School has always been the CIA's private stash of genes for the secret Human Genome Project. So I see Walensky, who's currently running the WHO, I believe. You may want to bring up Walensky, but you get the idea here. If the CIA is running this private thing, and they're looking at these private genes, and they're doing private DNA vaccine technology testing, right? And they're testing these aerosolized vaccines. Now, at this time, the Yale vaccines, the Yale aerosol vaccines and the Yale anthrax stuff had not come out yet. I didn't know about that, so I didn't associate it necessarily with anthrax, even though I was talking a lot about anthrax at that time with the sprayer house doing anthrax. I didn't associate the school with potentially the testing. I did go up to Newburgh, to a prison in Newburgh, and then also Rikers Island, where Jeff Epstein supposedly spent his last days, also were testing areas, right? For this sort of CIA secret genome project, if you will. But the kids all did have the same sort of anomaly, and they were all going to Yale Medical, right? Now, since then, we know not only is Yale a critical part of the anthrax project, but they're a critical part of the aerosolization. And that's a critical part of the anthrax 911 attacks, right? And this could explain Jordan Walker. This could explain the Jordan Walker kissing George Bush's press secretary on the forehead, kissing Karl Rove on the forehead. Can you imagine? Can you imagine, Andy, kissing Karl Rove on the forehead? And Jordan Walker is pretty, young, athletic, strong, good-looking guy. I think he can get dates on his own. I don't think he has to go to an old George Bush PR guy to kiss him on the forehead. But yeah, at Yale in 2011, he kisses George Bush's CIA recruiter at Yale on the forehead and says, I want to do bad things in pharmaceuticals. He wants to do bad things in pharma. I'm looking a little bit like Jake Gilly, the warrior guy with this stripe on my face from the sun. But anyway, you get what I'm saying here is there is this CIA contingent that is playing and secreting these private genes in this private genome project. Where would you test stuff that penetrates the cerebral spinal column and transitions over the blood-brain barrier? Where would you test it? Yes, you could test it in the prisons. You could test it at Rikers. You could test it in Newburgh, right? Rove kisses forehead and disses. Who kissed who? Did Jordan Walker kiss Rove or did Rove kiss Jordan Walker? Andy, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Your mic's muted.
Sorry, I had to blow my nose. But before Rove tore into the country's current healthcare system, he planted a smooch on the forehead of Progressive Party Chairman Jordan Walker in 2013. During the
Rove kept
introductions, Walker said that Rove was similar to Progressive Party members and that Mr. Rove has beauty. Rove stood up, took a small bow, and then walked over and placed a large kiss on Walker's forehead. Later, Rove directed a comment to Walker, "If you were only 20 years older and an attractive woman." That was pretty good.
Well, you see what I'm saying here? It says CIA. It screams CIA,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what do I need Jordan Walker for? I only need Jordan Walker for this. I only need Jordan Walker for thumb drives. That's what Jeff Epstein's trying to say. We can now just get thumb drives and take them to U.S. Virgin Islands, and we're home free. We can make all the money tax free, and it's a digital world now. Medicine's going to be digital. Finance is going to be digital. We know where all the new technology is being spent through DARPA and InQtel. We control this. We're the masters of this universe because we have the thumb drives, right? So this is what they're saying. So anyway, the aerosolization, we know that Yale does this. We know that they've been involved for a long period of time. And this may be, now remember that Bruce Ivins says the person who committed the crime in November of 2001. He says it's Farkhouse, and he has a list of 10 reasons why Farkhouse did it. Right? One of the reasons is he's working with GE Health Systems, and GE Health Systems is the one who's doing the aerosolization. And he's providing that to Fort Detrick at that time to aerosolize the monkeys. Bruce Ivins is not involved in that. Farkhouse is. Now, Farkhouse's mother lives on the same street as Lundgren, the gal who died. Bruce Ivins says Farkhouse lives on the same street. Make me small, Andy, and make the map big, please, because I got this Jake and Jelly stripe on me. Hey, everybody, go into the Capitol, get arrested. Yeah, okay, yeah. And it was only a couple of miles. You see what I'm saying? And it was at the end of this road. It was only a couple of miles at the end of this road from Oxford. And this is where the last anthrax person dies. Now, where are you going to go to test these new vaccines, these new CIA DNA vaccines? Right? Are you going to test them down in Yale where there's a whole bunch of PhDs running around that know how to do antisense technology and swab for anthrax? Or are you going to do it in this remote podunk town where everybody's kind of a tradesman or a farmer? Right? And you have this small cohort of kids, and then you just run it. You run your basic things through the school. Again, Shuang Wu has patents with the air conditioning system. She's
Ventilation
CIA,
systems.
yeah, she's the one in the CIA org chart, right? The CIA Pfizer org chart that has the patents in the York air conditioning. I didn't make this up. She's the one who filed for the patent, not me. She's the front person for the CIA, not me. Right? We know that they doped air conditioning filters to do this. They started in 1949 with Operation Sea Spray, starting with the Pentagon, and they worked their way down. We know schools, hospitals, and universities and government buildings are their target. Now, are you going to test it on the Capitol building, right? Or are you going to test it on this remote backwater in this special ed class, right? And this is where I say this. I went up there and I talked to everybody, and the kids were killed. Why would Scott Pelley make up a story about me when I said he had help, right? Unless it was to try to taint me with I was somehow a Sandy Hook denier. I'm not a Sandy Hook denier. Quite the opposite. I'm saying that Lanza had help, and it was a cleanup operation. And I'll tell you why. Lanza's mother worked for Yale Medical through some kind of DARPA program. I don't know how. She's murdered. And then 20 kids are murdered. And they're all the kids that were in this room, this one room, big, great room. And there were 6 teachers that were there who were teaching assistants looking at various symptoms of these kids, which is a lot of teachers, in addition to parent volunteers. They were all killed. Only 2 people wounded, supposedly. And one of them was barely wounded on her foot, and the other one's barely wounded as well. I didn't even find any paramedics, and I found no firemen and no policemen that could remember taking anybody to the hospital. That's unusual in a mass shooting where 26 people are killed. I went and covered the Ybor shootings downtown in Tampa. The ratio I went there the next day, right? The ratio 2 dead, 18 wounded. It's usually about a 9 or 10 to 1 ratio between wounded and dead in a mass shooting. It's never 26 dead when you got kids running, screaming, yelling. They're running in all directions. There's mass panic, pandemonium. You got gunshots going off. The fact that all 26 die, all the Yale kids, all the Yale anthrax kids die, and then there's only 2 other slight woundings, and none of the people involved, the police, fire, or first responders, can remember taking anybody to the hospital. Right? This is why I think Scott Pelley smeared me, because there was very few people who actually went to Sandy Hook and actually did any investigating. Most people were looking at films, right? That Alex Jones was saying, hey, this is what I think, from Austin. And people all around the world were saying, oh, look, he's laughing. He couldn't be the father and all this stuff. Nobody went there and actually did the underground reporting. I told Oren Schroyer this. I told Jack Prosovic this. I even indirectly told Corsi this at InfoWars, and I told Mike Chernovich indirectly. So 4 different people, and Alex knew this. But notice how they trot out Alex now, right before the election, and they trot out Tucker Carlson, and then they trot them out together, right? And then they start saying how bad Sandy Hook is and how you can't touch Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook's the third rail. You can't talk about the Yale anthrax and the air conditioning system at Sandy Hook. That's off limits. But yet it's right down the street from the last anthrax victim, right? And this FBI still doesn't have an explanation, Andy, of how did she die. She never received any email. She never received any mail. Now, I'm not saying that Stephen Hatfield and Farkhouse got in black bloc and they were the 2 guys who helped Adam Lanza. I'm not saying that. But I am saying I do believe this was a Yale anthrax test project. And I do think these kids had advanced inhalation anthrax. And I do think they were presenting meningococcal presentations, advanced meningococcal presentations. And I do think it was a cleanup operation. Nothing about the metadata is in keeping with a mass shooting. So if you go to the next slide, Andy, I'm sorry if I missed the juice on those slides. Can you go back to your slides, Andy, and tell me what I missed while I was talking?
Well, this is just it was pretty much kind of going over what you were saying. So this is the memory holes. This is like the Newton B, which Sandy Hook was in the Newton school district, took down these articles. I don't know if they were trying to cover them up or whatever, but why is the Newton B removing articles related to Sandy Hook citizen investigations? Cinderella noticed several memory holes yesterday in relation to 2 issues reported on by bloggers. The shabby condition of Sandy Hook Elementary, which suggests it was closed as a school long before 12/14/12. The photos of the school remain intact here. Where's that last article? And this is from the Newton B, and now deleted articles. As examples, in 2002, Consulting Engineering Services recommended to the school district that that's Sandy Hook, be worked on in 2010 over a 9-month period to upgrade and renovate its heating and ventilation system at a cost of $4.5 million. 2 years later, in 2004, the Newton Board of Education was told there were a serious problem with Sandy Hook Elementary roof. And in 2008, there was more bad news that was contaminated with some asbestos. So they replaced the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning in 2010, right before the Sandy Hook shooting, George Webb.
Yeah, and this is the same thing we found down at UTMB with the Wuhan lab, right? The heating and air conditioning upgrade. So, I don't know what is conspiratorial about reading an article about an HVAC upgrade and the fact that people were in there monkeying with the HVAC, but this is right about the time that our guy, Jordan Walker, is recruited in 2011 from the CIA, by Karl Rove at that time, right? So somebody has to go up there and he hates white kids. He's been very vocal about that. And he hates little Trumps, and he wants little Trumps to die. So I don't know what his attitude is, but what I'm saying is you can't look beyond this connected data. GE Systems was the guy who was providing the aerosolization of the anthrax, this Farkhouse guy. He's currently living in New Hampshire. He's doing therapy horses for veterans, which is laudable, right? But the key thing here about Lundgren is Joel Lundgren, right? Joel Lundgren of GE Health Systems is the guy who sues as the analytical chemist a critical technology for DNA mapping. Joel, that's the case. The Huxt Celanese, IG Farben Huxt Celanese versus GE. And GE, Joel Lundgren, is the analytical chemist that brings the case.
That's like Hocht, as in like the
Huxt.
Hutch. That's the like the Nazi chemical company.
Yes. IG Farben, Huxt. And British Celanese, of course, goes back to the the insiders, the Balfour insiders in England, with British Celanese, the Dreyfus family. So that was British Celanese. So what I'm saying is they have this dye called dye 333. The 42nd instantiation was dye 33342. And it's marking all the A's and T's, and it's the first biomarker before the Human Genome Project. British Celanese had the inside track with Huxt dye 33342, right? And now GE and Joel Lundgren is the thing standing between them and the Human Genome Project, their private Human Genome Project, their biomarker project. If you remember, the third person on the Pfizer org chart is Dolston. And Dolston's involved in the biomarker project before he's involved in the Human Genome Project, before he's involved in the Cancer Genome Atlas Project. And he's this guy who starts it with Biden for the second Cancer Genome Atlas Project. He's involved in these biomarkers that you get from the Huxt 33342 dye. And the guy standing in the way from, again, Farkhouse's GE Health Systems, not a different company than Farkhouse, the same company Bruce Ivins said, okay, is Joel Lundgren. Now, to me, as an investigator, I look for means, motive, and opportunity. That's a motive. Billions and billions of dollars is a motive. People kill each other over $10,000 inheritance. Billions in a lifelong franchise is a motive. Why didn't the people that were investigating? Now, remember, Bruce Ivins tells this to the FBI investigators in November of 2001. Right, as our nation's looking for the anthrax killer. Says he works for GE Health Systems in Piscataway, a couple of train stops away from the mailboxes in Princeton. Says he does the aerosolization for Fort Detrick to aerosolize the monkeys. This is all in the FBI's database as of November of 2001. There's 8 more things we don't know about. But one of the things we know is the BARDA right now is stocking up on anthrax vaccines that go back to Bruce Ivins, that goes back to the technology that Bruce Ivins was perfecting and showed in 1989 in Winchester. This is why I agree with Mark Kulak that if you solve anthrax 911, well, you solve Corona 911, and you solve all future Corona 911s like flu 911 or whatever they're coming up with. This is critically important to cracking the deep state. Right? You crack this, you crack the deep state, right? And GE Health Systems is a big part of this.
All right, George Webb, we have officially hit the 2-hour mark. I know you are on McDuff.
That's it. Yeah, I'm on McDuff later, and I don't want to step on John O'Loughlin's time right now. This show's starting right now. And I'm sorry, Andy, that we went a little bit over. But I think it was important for people to understand that this Yale private genome project, the Jordan Walker private genome project, is very important. And Bruce Ivins said Farkas was the killer in November 2001, and the FBI covered up and deflected. Right? That's really super important. That's a motive for killing Bruce Ivins. So.
You're definitely solve anthrax. You solve Corona, George Webb, and we're definitely on the case. once again, go tune into McDuff. He's starting right now on McDuff Lives on Rumble. I'm not sure which YouTube channel, but George will be on later tonight at 8 p.m. So make sure you go and catch that and give it a watch, give it a listen. We will be back Friday from 9 a.m. to you doing John Cena's. You can't see me.
Hey, count them. Hey,
we got Friday. We will be back 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I don't know where Aaron Adler was at. Aaron was supposed to be at the Warren Steel plant today. He was supposed to pop in, so that would have been perfect timing if he would have popped in when you brought it up. But hopefully we can get to that later this week. Once again, go check out McDuff. Follow George Webb at Real George Webb 1 on Twitter. Make sure you donate a coffee or go to his PayPal at GeoWebb and throw some dollars in this man's pocket. You know, we don't have mainstream media. We don't have the big bucks from CNN and NBC, all the big players. We're just toughing it out here by ourselves. And if you want truth news, you want George Webb to continue traveling around the country and bringing you the best, most up-to-date stories, throw some money in his pocket. And you might get a little more, ladies and gentlemen. You might, I don't know how you can, but you might get a little more news from Mr. G-Dub over there. But George, have a good day. Once again, catch him on McDuff. We will be back Friday. Everyone, stay true to yourselves and do your research. Get on that keyboard and start clicking away. Go back and do some compound searches on all the people, all the places, all the things we've talked about, and send us an email, neighborhoodnewsstudio@gmail.com, and let us know what you find. You never know, we might bring it up on the show on Friday. Everyone, have a wonderful day.
Started seeing like blackberries, government issued blackberries, government issued blackberries, government issued blackberries. They were blackberries. Man, this looks like government issued equipment. Man, this looks like government issued equipment. Man, this looks like government issued equipment.